What if the peace you've been chasing was never at the end of the journey, but waiting in the moment you stopped chasing? What if spiritual awakening isn't a finish line, but the beginning of a deeper, quieter transformation? And what if the real breakthrough isn't becoming someone new, but finally living as who you already are? Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring a powerful idea rooted in the work of Carl Jung, the idea that awakening is not the arrival, it's the door opening. Most people imagine spiritual growth as a climb toward clarity, a place where everything makes sense and confusion disappears. But Jung saw something different. He understood that awakening begins a process, and what comes after is what ancient thinkers called Sophia, a stage of deep psychological maturity where seeking softens and being takes its place. This video will walk you through 8 subtle but profound signs that suggest you may have already entered this stage. These aren't achievements, they're not badges of honor, they're quiet shifts in how you experience yourself and the world. And as you listen, you might recognize that you're closer to this state than you ever realized. The first sign is that the wound no longer bleeds. Your past is still your past. The memories are still there. You remember what happened, you remember how it shaped you, and you remember the version of yourself who struggled to carry it. But when you look back now, something is different. Your body doesn't react the same way. There's no sharp contraction in your chest, no sudden emotional spiral pulling you backward. The pain didn't vanish. It changed its role. What once defined you now sits quietly in the background. It's part of your story, but it's no longer the lens through which you see everything. Jung called this shadow integration, not erasing the darkness, not pretending it never happened, but recognizing that the parts of you once rejected were created to protect you. You're no longer fighting yourself. The inner arguments have softened. The critical voices that once questioned your worth have lost their urgency, not because you silenced them by force, but because you finally understood what they were trying to defend. The wound became a scar, visible, yes, but no longer in control, and that scar becomes proof of survival, not weakness. The second sign is that the spiritual ego falls away. This one is subtle. There's no dramatic event, no lightning bolt of realization. You simply stop caring about being seen as awake or evolved. The labels that once felt important begin to feel unnecessary. You're not trying to prove how conscious you are. You're not measuring your progress against anyone else. You notice that around other people, there's no internal ranking system running. You're not scanning conversations to determine who is more aware or who is still asleep. If someone sees you as wise, it doesn't inflate you. If someone misunderstands you, it doesn't disturb you. Your identity is no longer built on recognition. You also stop trying to guide everyone. You can sit with someone at the beginning of their journey without feeling the need to correct them. Growth has its own timing. Jung understood that forcing insight onto someone before they're ready doesn't help, it intrudes. So you let people walk their path. You remain present without controlling. And in that quiet presence, the spiritual ego dissolves because it's no longer needed. The third sign is that the body becomes your compass. Wisdom moves out of constant mental analysis and settles into sensation. You don't endlessly seek external validation. You don't constantly ask for signs. Your body speaks clearly now, and you trust it. When something is wrong, you feel it before you can explain it. A subtle tightening, a heaviness, a resistance. When something is right, there's a calm internal yes. Your breath deepens. Your shoulders relax. There's no dramatic rush, just alignment. You stop confusing intensity with truth. High energy doesn't automatically mean right, and low energy doesn't automatically mean failure. You understand rhythm. Expansion and contraction are both part of the process. Instead of trying to transcend the body, you return to it. You stop overriding your signals just to meet expectations. The body becomes an ally, not an obstacle. The fourth sign is that solitude becomes fullness. Being alone no longer feels like something to endure. It feels like space. You don't feel fragmented when you're by yourself. You're not waiting for someone else to confirm your identity. Earlier in life, solitude might have felt uncomfortable, so you stayed busy, you stayed connected, you filled every quiet moment. Now, the impulse to escape yourself has softened. You don't use relationships to stabilize your sense of worth. When you choose connection, it's not from emptiness, it's from wholeness. Jung described this as existential self-sufficiency, not isolation, not emotional coldness, but the end of searching for yourself in someone else's reflection. You can enjoy intimacy without losing your center. You can step back without anxiety. Solitude becomes solid ground, and relationships become choices rather than necessities. The fifth sign is that your will transforms. You still act, you still create, you still participate in the world, but the force behind your actions has changed. Earlier, much of what you did may have been driven by hunger, a need to prove yourself, a need to secure meaning. Even success carried tension because it was tied to identity. Now that hunger has quieted. Action feels more like expression than survival. You pursue what feels aligned, but you're less attached to outcomes. If something works out, you're grateful. If it doesn't, you don't collapse. Failure becomes information, not a verdict on your worth. You begin to sense when to move forward and when to step back. This discernment doesn't come from overthinking, it comes from presence. Your will stops fighting life and starts moving with it. You're not passive, but you're no longer forcing. There's trust in the unfolding. The sixth sign is that time loses its authority. The pressure of when begins to loosen. You're not constantly telling yourself that peace will come later, once everything is resolved. You stop postponing your life. The past no longer pulls you backward with the same intensity. You can remember without reliving. The future doesn't demand guarantees before you act. You move forward without needing certainty. Presence becomes your default state, not a technique you practice only when stressed. You respond instead of react. Time still moves, but it no longer controls your sense of worth. Peace isn't waiting at the end of the road. It's here, in the movement itself. The seventh sign is compassion without the savior. You still feel deeply, you still care, but you no longer absorb everyone else's pain as your responsibility. Earlier, helping may have come with urgency. You felt compelled to fix, to rescue, to step in before things fell apart. Now, you understand that every person has a process they must walk themselves. Interrupting that process, even with good intentions, can limit growth. Jung believed it was a form of disrespect to assume you know exactly what another soul needs. So you listen without preparing solutions. You offer presence instead of control. You allow people their dignity, even when their path looks messy. And something unexpected happens. Your presence becomes more powerful than your advice ever was. People feel steadier around you because you are steady. Compassion becomes clarity, not sacrifice. The eighth sign is that the ordinary becomes sacred. Life becomes simple, not dull, not empty, just simple. You stop chasing peak experiences. You're not constantly seeking transcendence or dramatic insight. You wash dishes, and it's enough. You walk without needing it to lead somewhere extraordinary. There's no audience anymore. You're not narrating your growth. You're not performing awareness. The separation between spiritual and practical dissolves. This moment carries the same depth as any revelation because you're fully in it. Nothing extraordinary is happening, and for the first time, that feels complete. The sacred doesn't need to announce itself. It's woven into the ordinary. You don't need to add meaning. You simply stop overlooking what's already here. So what is Sophia? It's not a reward. It's not a badge. It's what remains when you stop running from yourself, when you stop trying to correct your nature into something more acceptable, when you stop arguing with who you are. If these signs resonate, it doesn't mean you've achieved something others haven't. It means something in you has settled, the seeking softened, the effort relaxed, the wisdom that was always there surfaced because nothing was covering it anymore. The real question isn't whether you've reached some final stage. The real question is quieter than that. Can you see yourself as you are, without the roles, without the endless search for what comes next? Can you stay here, in this moment, without needing it to become something else? Because if you can, then maybe you're not on the way anymore. Maybe you've already arrived, not at a destination, but at yourself.